Sustainability has become an increasingly critical subject amongst governments, NGOs, industry regulators, and companies across the globe. However, the subject of marketing sustainability is often not addressed with the same level of focus or rigour as other business disciplines. Hi, I'm Conor Byrne, and you are listening or possibly watching That's What I Call Marketing, the podcast where you're going to hear from the leading lights in the marketing world and listen to their unique stories. And today I am talking to Maddy Cooper. Maddy is founder and CEO of sustainability marketing agency Flourish. Maddy has over 20 years of agency experience as a founding partner of Brilliant Noise and formerly as Chief Commercial Officer of iCrossing. She's designed sustainability marketing transformation programs for clients including Nike, Allianz and Barilla. She's completed the Cambridge University Towards Net Zero course and is an assessor for the Cambridge University Sustainable Marketing, Media and Creative course. So when I needed to find out more about this topic, there really was only one place to go. And today we talk about sustainability marketing, what it actually means, the commercial benefits of sustainable businesses with plenty of robust evidence to back it up. We talk about the challenges organizations face when trying to think about sustainability marketing, how it can be authentic and have a real impact, as well as the challenges that come with not communicating it properly, green hushing as Maddy calls it. We look at how CMOs and marketers react to the topic of sustainability, how you could become a sustainable marketer. So much to learn here. Today is a really important topic. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Maddy, thanks so much for joining me at That's What I Call Marketing. Great to see you.
Great to see you too. It's lovely to be here.
Listen, tell me about Flourish. It's a new agency dedicated to the sustainability movement. Tell me more.
Yes. So this is pretty much day one of Flourish. It's serendipitous timing because we arranged this weeks ago. But yeah, today the website's launching and it's officially a new agency. So it's a change agency dedicated to sustainability marketing. So Flourish is the name, and the strapline is that the only business that matters is sustainable. Because I really believe that. We've got 6.5 years till 2030. There's a hell of a lot to do to massively reduce carbon emissions and regenerate biodiversity. It's the biggest ticking time bomb that humanity's ever faced. And I think it needs all of the love and attention that it can get. So that's why I've moved to focus only on that topic. And loving it so far. Early days.
And something you're incredibly obviously passionate about is sustainability marketing. But for people who may not know so much about it, and I will throw myself in the middle of that as well, what is sustainability marketing?
Sustainability marketing it's about effectively telling the stories of what an organization is doing for all of its kind of ESG initiatives, all of the things it's doing in order to be a better a corporate citizen and to make a better contribution. So most big corporations are actually doing an awful lot. They have got strong commitments in line with the UN, with the UN Paris Agreement, and they've got good initiatives behind them. So most of the organisations have set really strong goals. Only about 15% of those big organisations, and by that I mean FTSE 500. Only about 15% of them are actually planning to deliver their plans at the rate that climate science shows that they need to. So they've all got decent plans, but they're not really ambitious enough to make a difference for the sake of the planet. But then, as well as that, the sustainability marketing element of it is that the ones that tell the stories of their change and their efforts really, really well do brilliantly. So business at the moment is really, really difficult. Mm-hmm. Most leaders think they've always had the hardest time ever in business and everything. Everyone's terribly busy and it's all really, really, really difficult. At the moment, they've got a point. It's really difficult. Is it permacrisis? Is it polycrisis? Is it VUCA? Of what, you know, it's just endless flipping complexity.
Yeah.
Redundancies and challenges absolutely everywhere. Revenues, profits, market share, all kind of plummeting because everything's really flipping difficult. But the thing that's really interesting about sustainability is that the businesses that really prioritize sustainability are the ones that are succeeding relative to their competitors.
Okay.
So it's massive. I'm a very optimistic and deeply pragmatic commercial person.
Yeah.
So I'm not having this as some kind of like, I don't know, hippie-ish side move. No way. This is about like a ruthlessly commercial, pragmatic approach to make the big businesses shift to prioritize sustainability, because we're not going to get there without the big businesses changing. And they need to see it as a commercial gain, because otherwise I'm not bother. Because everybody's obsessed with the shareholder returns, everybody's obsessed with that kind of like that cadence of proof of commercial value on a quarterly basis. But actually the ones that get it and they change to prioritize sustainability, they're the ones that are outsmarting and outperforming the standard businesses. And I've got a kind of flurries of examples of those kinds of commercial successes that I can share. Because that's really,
what I would love. I would love to hear some of that, because that you know, because I think you're absolutely right. Like the commerciality and in marketing, I think we probably need to do a better job of just being more commercial. I think commercial marketing is, you know, is key. And you know, to hear that, you know, you say that like you're not coming at this from a perspective of this is lovely and we should do this and, you know, all, you know, I don't know, live together happily ever after, right? But it's important for two reasons. It's important for the future of, yes, the planet that we're on and generations to come, but it's important because it makes a commercial difference to a business. So give me some examples of businesses that you know that have, you know, engaged with this properly and that are seeing the commercial returns.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, so Unilever is a really good example. So Paul Polman, who was CEO of Unilever for 10 years, took that business from actually kind of, it fallen to, I think, being in like third place relative to the other FMCG mega companies. And he developed the Sustainable Living Plan, which basically means the whole of the Unilever, the whole corporation has got sustainability as the core. It is the business strategy. It's not a bolt-on, it is the business strategy. The outcome of that is that their 28 sustainable living brands, so that would be like Ben & Jerry's, Pukati, Persil, there's about 28 of them. They have grown on average at 69%, 69% growth, creating 75% of the business's overall profits. So that's nuts. And in terms of their shareholder value, Unilever's valuation has grown 130% over the past 10 years, relative to Procter & Gamble at 80%, Nestle at 70%, Colgate Palmolive at sort of 60%. So in terms of shareholder value, so that's the sum of the parts of the profitability and the overall performance. It's huge, absolutely huge. And they've gone from having kind of lagged the other FMCGs to kind of very much over exceeding and getting back to being in that number one position. Patagonia is obviously like a golden child of sustainability, but their valuation has increased by 150% since 2015, while North Face has only increased by 30%.
Right.
So it's not like it's just this kind of, I mean, I live in Brighton and it's sort of very much kind of an alternative landscape. Patagonia and the like aren't only appealing in the edges. This isn't just kind of the sidelines in terms of citizens' demand. It's massive. And so another one is IKEA, valuation growth of 150% compared to, you know, pick a comparator, but like John Lewis, 50%.
Yeah.
So it's and then you can look at that in terms of like Gallup indices of is 17% higher productivity, 21% profit overall. There's loads of examples of it. Mark Carney says, so former governor of the Bank of England, he said that climate change is the greatest commercial opportunity of our time.
Wow.
Because actually, if people engage with it properly, there's so many jobs, there's so much innovation, there's so much prosperity. But for me, the most important thing is that you've got, on one side, you've got all of the businesses that frankly are floundering and losing brilliant people, losing all of their, you know, their commercial success. And then on the other side, you've got the people that are prioritizing sustainability. It's nuts. Like, be the ones that be for good and thrive. Like, it's why ever wouldn't anyone do that?
Yeah, it's really interesting.
It has to be the strategy, and then it is the commercial answer, as well as the right thing for humanity.
Yeah, I think that's interesting, because like the point you made about it being the strategy, like, it has to be core and central to the business, right, and where the business is going. So it has to come from CEO, right? But then, and maybe I'm moving too fast into this point, but I do want to get to it, because where does it sit within marketing? Because so that's, I find really interesting, because like it's a business strategy. So what's the role of marketing, and why should there be sustainability marketing? Does it not just sit within the ESG part of the organization?
So that, I think, is a key part of where Flourish is going to focus. Is it needs to come from a CEO and like a full board down. Like, that's why it's been so powerful at Unilever, because it is, sustainability is the business strategy, and then it weaves through the whole of the organization. Most big corporations have got their they've got their annual reports, and they've got the sustainability reports, because it's a legal obligation, they have to fill them in. The ones that think of it as a box ticking exercise, they don't deserve to thrive particularly, and they don't. And then there's the ones that have it like with real integrity. They're actually doing all of the things to make a difference. They are doing the right things, and for the sake of the planet, just doing the right things in line with the ESG plan, like fully completing all of the sort of the CSR initiatives. That's what actually is making a real difference for the sake of the planet and humanity. So good on them, and it's great that they're doing those things. But too often they have brilliant annual reports of their action, communicate their action, and there is stuff that they're doing. But it's on the corporate website, or it's off the main website, or even brand websites in the footer. I think only I look at those footers because I'm interested in what they're doing. I'd love their web to see their web analytics, because I don't think many people other than me look at those footers. They really don't. I mean, who would? There's an example. So I wouldn't be mean in names, but say as the big automotive company, luxurious automotive company I was having a look at, and they say absolutely nothing about electric cars or sustainability at all, but it's automotive, and they've got massive impending targets, and then they've got a thing about their efforts, like in a responsibility section off the footer. Now, what that company could be doing is communicating and telling those stories really brilliantly to elevate their brand and make it loved and desirable for this age of sustainability. But it's stuck. So you get these different brain types of leadership, and then you've got all of the ESG folks. The problem is that the ESG people that have chosen to work in ESG, or kind of in sustainability leadership within an organisation, they're often from a scientific background, or they've got the clout and the integrity to be leading the programme, but they're really different brain types to marketers. They don't think marketers. So they irritate each other, because the sustainability folks have got all the integrity and they're doing all the right things, but the marketing folks don't really understand what's being done, so they're too scared to communicate it. And because they haven't got the confidence and the clarity to communicate it, it gets stuck, and then they don't tell those stories. So really, it should sit at the CEO level and be a strategy, but get the sustainability and the marketing people to connect and work together to get then the stories out to the market.
That's really interesting. I don't know if you've know of LaFawn Davis, and she's the senior vice president of ESG at Indeed, and she actually, she said that the work that has to be done is the responsibility of everybody in that organization, right? And I really kind of got connected to that at the time, and I remember speaking to her and saying, like, how can we do more in marketing? But then the day-to-day happened, right?
Yeah.
And so how does it have to be then carved out into a marketing, like, not a big function, but like, if you're talking about big organizations, should they have a function within marketing that is responsible for telling these stories?
I think it needs to be a fundamental marketing capability. I mean, we're 6.5 years to go until 2030, and the scale of the impending climate crisis, this isn't a sideline. It is fundamental to business, and the cost of inaction is it's bonkers compared to the cost of doing something about it now. So it needs to be a core competency and confidence level of all marketers, and it really should be where there are genuine stories to tell for a brand. Let's say of Indeed, what Indeed we're doing, or whatever any brand is doing.
Yeah.
For example, anyone. The marketing team needs to really understand it in terms that they can process and then translate to their audiences. But it doesn't really work if it's an add-on. If it's a bolt-on to the brand story, kind of lacks integrity.
Yeah.
And there it really matters that marketers have got the confidence and conviction to be fit for purpose in this age of sustainability. It's fundamental that they need to tell these stories because younger consumers care more. There's a massive kind of swathe of data that from all different angles that shows that younger consumers will definitely pay more for sustainable products and services. So
really,
these brands, yeah, definitely. There's loads of data points that confirm that from all different angles. So marketers need to be able to make their brands relevant for this age of sustainability. They need that future brand relevance. They've got to tell their sustainability story. So it has to be fundamental. And I think if we look at the legacy of digital transformation, all of the companies that made it fundamental to their business strategy thrived. All of the ones that had it as like a bit of a bolt-on perished or like floundered around a bit. But where they made it fundamental, then they did really, really well. I think there's a lot of kind of lessons to be learned from that comparison.
It's really interesting the point you make about the young consumers willing to pay more, because there is evidence, that the more kind of brand equity you have, the less price sensitivity there is around your products and services. And so obviously then, sorry, I'm making a massive leap of unscientific anything here, but you could argue that that might be aligned to sustainability, adds to the brand equity, which then helps you in terms of your ability to increase prices or just charge a premium, which is good commerciality for a business.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think there's so the more loved and relevant a brand can be for this context of sustainability, the more they can justify charging for the brand. But also, there's a kind of little bit of a, I suppose, antidote and reality check. There's an interesting YouGov survey I read recently, which shows that of Gen Z citizens, there should be citizens now, not consumers, because we should be a bit anti-consumption, and it's more about being citizenship. Gen Zs will be, I believe it's 75% more likely to buy based on sustainability,
right?
Whereas 49% will buy based on brand. Okay. So that's a real provocation to all of the legacy of brand building, because if you've got some amazingly well-known brand, it's a sustainability story of another brand will trump the other brand value, because it's over. It's sort of superseding now.
So they're doing that research, like they're looking, they're checking, it's really interesting actually. I was looking to do something last Christmas around, the ugly Christmas sweater. trend that happens every year.
Yeah.
And we're going to do something around, I can't remember what it was, but it was connected to it. I remember speaking to somebody on the ESG team, based out of Dublin, and his first reaction was fast fashion, though. You know, and that those jumpers are, you know, they're made, they're worn once, they're, you know, production values are low, like all the kind of things. His first reaction was that. I was like, that didn't even cross my mind. And that's interesting. And I think that might go back to your point about core competencies of marketers and having this as a core competency that you start to build out. Like, I find those moments funny because they're moments where I realize, I'm missing something. You know, and then I have to go and educate myself. And I love that. I'm like, this is amazing, which part of this conversation is helping me do that. But how do marketers go about starting to build that core competency? And probably maybe, you know, younger, newer marketers, it's just part of their kind of their everyday. But, you know, but are there things you think people should be doing as marketers kind of start to build that core competence?
Yeah, I think there's, like anything, you've got to have a kind of schema of the foundations, foundational learnings that everything else can build upon. More people need to understand the reality of the impending situation. You know, we can all see the whether it's the significance of the climate change going on in Australia and you know all of the in so many examples throughout Europe last year. There's the feeling it. The first is feeling it in order that people can kind of mean it and start to think and behave differently. So tuning into those examples, and that this isn't some kind of future state that will happen in lesser developed countries. It's increasingly real. So for people to understand that and feel it more will help them tune in and take greater action. I think there's then layers of understanding of what matters. So things like your jumper example is perfect. I had one of the school emails yesterday saying, it's dress up like a bee day on Friday. So this is my 5-year-old. And I wanted to put my head in my hands at the thought of like, okay, so they're learning about biodiversity. Great, 5, lovely. But then they want everyone to buy a load of cat from Amazon to dress up like a bee and then chuck it in the bin the next day. Like, what? So my son needed some trainers anyway because he needed them. So I've gotten some yellow and black striped trainers that are made from recycled materials. So I'm very smug about that. But it won't be single use. And it can look like a bee, but it won't be single use. Now, that's obviously a daft example. But whether it be the jumper day or encouraging people in schools, in businesses everywhere, like single use is not cool. Right. And it's not just the plastic water bottles. It's like, it's in everything. So then it's the layers of understanding. So keeping things for as long as possible really matters. So the Patagonia principle of making things that last, so buying better and having it last longer, is like fast fashion has got to stop. More expensive, higher value things. That's hard in a cost of living crisis, but from a retail perspective, just this addiction to that, I shop, therefore I am, new stuff, like that's got to diminish now so that people have things that they keep for longer. And then it's things like helping them to understand that the sort of repairing things is cool and it's a good thing, and and then donating them or kind of handing them on to other people, giving them a new lease of life is important. Worst cases, you would recycle something. So kind of recycling, it's like a last resort.
That's interesting.
Yeah, just chucking everything in the recycling isn't great because it's all got to take energy in order for it to be recycled. Yeah. Much better to keep the thing in the first place because it's a better thing, or give it to a new person, or at the or fix it, or as a very worst case, you recycle it.
Go back, it makes me think about, was my mother a wonderful sustainability advocate? Because we had so many hand-me-downs from cousins. That's really interesting, isn't it? Like, and it's not today or yesterday, but it's not that long ago either, where, the bag of stuff would come from the older cousin, or we'd be sending, you know what I mean? And that would come and we'd go through it, and that was it. That was your new clothes.
Yeah, absolutely. And few things being new and it being normalized. And I think things like Vinted are really important for that because they're making it cool.
Okay.
You know, it's not, younger generations are now seeing that buying stuff from Vinted is desirable. And there's big changes in that. I can't remember the exact statistics, but I'm going to be sharing articles around it. There's a quite a surprising percentage of people in the last, only in 2022, bought secondhand tech. So the rise of Vinted is one example, but whether it be like Music Magpie or instances of that where people buy used technology rather than leaving the old version sitting in a drawer, which most of us, too many people do. That it's you buy something that might be like a year old or something, but it's not, again, the addiction to the new. Making things last longer is much more, it's the cooler way.
There's a big campaign here. I can't remember which telco it's for, which is, probably they'll be annoyed if they are listening to this. They're like, but it's about it's about recycling old mobile phones, and it's been done in a clever way in that it's the money up front. It's like you can get money for this phone that's sitting in your drawer wherever it is. And my assumption is they're doing it for commercial reasons, that they will get those phones, obviously somehow or upcycle them. I'm hoping they're not going into just a tech, dumpster out the back, but like that there's some gain in it. And that's, I think Vinted is a good example of that as well. Like I'm definitely probably not that target audience, but I've seen their ads. I really like their ads. So their ads do a really good job of going back to the marketing piece. Like they're brand ads, right? They are, they do a good job. They build the brand, but it's all about the sustainability story without it being too overt either. I think it's not kind of preachy, which I think probably might be quite good. Because that was one of the things I was wondering about as you were talking there, is like, oh, is this all just purpose? Are we back there where, it's, purpose, and people are a bit jaded of it, possibly, I think. But it feels like it may not be. It's more about kind of more, as you said, integrity, right? Deep commercial integrity about where a company is going. And then telling those stories isn't necessarily trying to be purposeful, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I mean, I think people have sort of chucked the purpose of word around for a long time, and it's got to be emotionally resonant now for particularly younger audiences, but for all of those people that have genuine climate anxiety. Like, climate anxiety is not some kind of silly notion. It's real because the state of the planet is real. We're due to lose half of global GDP because of the dependency on high functioning biodiversity. Like half of global GDP, and even like 20% of that be lost by 2050. So this is like massive in terms of the commercial impact of it. But in terms of then of the how do brands then be relevant and appealing to citizens to make them want to buy these better products? It's showing the stories of why their products are more relevant and sensitive to the planet, where the reality is impending, and you have to make a difference. So brands aren't going to be relevant for these younger audiences because climate change is the number one priority for these younger audiences. So I think rather than it just being like in a purposeful context, which is maybe a little bit sort of, well, arguably greenwashy. It's just kind of getting on the bandwagon for the sake of it. This has to be like telling stories in a meaningful way because they actually, they're doing real things and they've got genuine stories to be able to tell.
And it's like that, anytime if you're making an ad, one of the things you look for is what's the role of the brand in this piece of communications. Like, again, that seems like really important to know. Like, what is the role of this brand in what we're doing around our sustainability objectives. Because if that's not clear, or if it's not genuine or authentic, it's just going to smack of, you know, as you like, greenwashing or whatever kind of washing you want to call it.
Yeah. All of the colours are purposeful. I think the different, what the kind of there's multiple shades of green, and the greenwashing element is abhorrent. Like, starkly, greenwashing is stealing from future generations, because it's trying to get on the bandwagon now and be kind of appealing to whichever demographics, but not meaning it. And fundamentally, if we want to exist as a civilization, and not cause harm to significant proportions of our societies, then you have to mean it, and they have to be doing the right thing. So intentional greenwashing is an absolute no-no. But something that's a real area where I'm going to be focusing on is like the harm of green hushing. So green hushing is a really important concept for people in the sort of sustainability marketing space to understand. And green hushing is really dangerous, and lots of people have said it's as dangerous as greenwashing. So Deborah Meaden and I think Mark Carney and various people have referred to it on that basis, because the problem with green hushing is it's slowing down the climate movement, and we haven't got any time for that. Like the UN Council have said, you know, with this recent IPCC report that was just out, it's like, we've got the means to reverse climate change. There's the ability to do it, but it needs radical acceleration. And yet we've got inertia within organisations because they don't quite know what to do and what to say. And that's where the green hushing is really damaging, because people are marketers usually because they haven't got the confidence and conviction and capabilities that we spoke of earlier. Because they haven't got those, they're so scared of being accused of greenwashing that they kind of say nothing.
Right.
And if they say nothing, then they're not accelerating the rate at which consumers choose their more sustainable products. So if a business has really invested in the innovation to create more sustainable products, if they made all of that effort and investment, then they need to communicate them effectively to get citizens to buy those things more than they bought the other dirtier, carbon greedy, whatever versions. It's really, really important that they do start to buy those at a greater rate. In order we can decarbonise and make a gentler impact on the planet. So if the stories aren't out there because of the greenwashing, everything is slower. The adoption of more sustainable products is slower. The commercial growth of the businesses that are trying hard but communicating badly, their success is slower, which means that they're then likely to be investing less in all of their ESG kind of initiatives in order to be better. So it's kind of like a really negative spiral that needs a rocket up it. So if they can break the green hushing and get on with telling stories really effectively, it's absolutely what their commercial success would needs, and it's definitely what the planet needs.
It's so like, because you look at that and you kind of go, it's almost like it becomes a self-fulfilling thing, oh, we won't tell the story. And then it was like, we look at our products that are more sustainable, they're not doing as well. Do you know what I mean? And then we're like, well, it's not commercially viable, and we'll do less and less. You can see how that becomes a really dangerous spiral. Whereas if we've created this product that is more sustainable, we need to invest more of our money in communicating about that product over the one that we have for years, and it just, that's easy for me to say, right? Because, and I know what it's like in a business, and people are like, yeah, but we've got this short-term thing. And maybe there's a great case study, actually, nothing to do with sustainability, but it's one of the IPA effectiveness case studies from Direct Line. I think it's called, when they went short, we went long. And the whole idea was, it was Mark Evans at the time. And when he joined the business, he said he knew he needed to build a brand for the long term. But he also knew that if he just came in and said, I'm going to build a brand for the long term, and we're not going to worry so much about our short term, he wouldn't have lasted 6 months, because the business was so reliant on short term. And so he knew he had kept the short term machine humming and driving leads and driving sales. And then on a parallel path, almost kind of, I don't know, secret, but like this parallel path, he then looked at how to build the brand. And it feels like that might almost be a way where for sustainability marketing is almost create a hub for it within your marketing organization that says, like, actually, yes, this team over here is going to focus on, what we do now, but this team is going to focus and build the future. And we're going to commit and dedicate budget to them to prove, setting them up for success, to prove that it can work by giving them sufficient budget, like really kind of investing in it. And larger companies must be doing that. Are they doing that, or are they just kind of trying to wrap it up into the overall marketing?
I think the ones that are doing really well and are reaping the rewards are going all out, and they're making absolutely core to everything, like Unilever and whatnot. But the ones that are floundering are the ones that are kind of launching sustainable products, but they're launching them in a kind of a bit of a meek, sort of poorly funded way. And then you've got, say, the Unilever are thriving and enjoying all this 69% kind of growth and all of the profits that go with that, relative to other FMCGs that are launching products, sustainable products, but poorly because they're so scared of doing it. They say really kind of like, well, it's in recycled packaging, or like what fairly limp claims, really. They don't say really decisive, impressive things. So then a lot of kind of citizens are a bit ambivalent about whether or not it's actually any good, and then they end up having to take the products off the shelves. So there's quite a lot of instances of FMCGs who are launching sustainable products and spending all that money on innovation, all that money on half-hearted marketing, only for them to be rejected from the supermarkets because they're not bold and good enough. They're just not fully investing in them. So to your point of like, this may be I don't know, sort of more kind of innovative or experimental approach to the marketing, I think that kind of is important, but with a view that it becomes mainstream really quickly and it doesn't stay as the bolt on. It's got to maybe it's got to kind of earn its way to telling the stories of like, no, actually, this is the lead way of marketing, so it can become the core. But you've got to flip fairly quickly to it becoming that core.
Well, and something we worked on together many years ago was hypothesis-led marketing and testing and like a framework for that. And you can actually see how that would sit smartly within this. To your point of like, we're going to test it. And, there's a lot of these brands are in a lot of big countries, but even if you're not a Unilever, you still have the ability to test in a smaller way and figure out what bits will work, and then move it into the mainstream, because you can, you can suppress other things. You can, figure out, like, testing. If you invest the time in figuring out your testing and your structure, as we did, there's a lot of ways to see what can succeed and then accelerate it with, just bigger and bigger investment. Because I agree with you, the risk is it sits in, that's that team over there. Like they have to have a proper seat at the table, right? Which you need probably then senior leadership running, if you were to set it up that way. And I'm not saying that's the right way, but you need senior leadership that have kind of a strong voice and are given the investment and the ability to prove that it can work. And out of the brands that you see, and maybe not like the bigger ones, like are there kind of, I mean, we've mentioned Vinted is a good example, but are there other smaller brands that you see that are doing well in this space?
Well, I think there's lots of examples of brands that are rising up really, really quickly. So if you think of, say, let's go back to the FMCG example of where some of them just aren't going to market quickly enough. People like, say, I don't know, Beyond Meat or all of those kinds of brands, like alternative meat brands. Yeah. And then you think of the likes of, say, Quorn or some of the incumbents, and then all the big FMCG groups, where the big FMCG groups have been too slow to get to their offers to market.
Yeah.
Because they've either been maybe a little bit complacent or a little bit inertia or just kind of not confident enough. They've completely missed the trick. Like they could have had Unilever-esque growth, and instead Beyond Meat and all of these newbies have come into the market and they've taken the claim, or Oatly, whatever, anybody else could have had that market, but Oatly smashed it and have brought up all of the market share because they did it boldly and quickly, and they were compelling with the commercial, with the environmental claims. So I think it's those ones with the interesting examples to watch. They're the ones that have actually already come in as the tiny ones and have taken what could have been the opportunity of the big guys.
Yeah, Oatly's a great example.
They trust because they make claims that are believable.
Yeah, I like Oatly's work, and they're kind of structured strangely, as far as I know, in terms of marketing. I don't know if they've a traditional marketing setup with the CMO. And I did read something recently. I think so. They're very creative led, which is interesting because that makes them more disruptive. And maybe there's just a less of they're willing to take more risks because they've, in a way, less to lose. Sometimes when you're a bigger brand, you're like, well, a dip here is a dip. But as you say, there's so much evidence that says it's commercially not more than viable. One other that struck me, and I don't know if it would be considered sustainable brand, but Tony's Chocolonely, does that fit into the category? Yeah.
I mean, amazing. Partly because the product's flipping delicious.
Yeah.
Like it's a really good product. It's not a compromised rubbish version. It's like it's better, like at least as good, if not better than everyone else. But it's baked into that product. Like it's such beautiful. I don't know which genius at Tony's Chocolonely came up with that idea, but the fact that they're uneven shapes, because it is a physical representation of the fact that the whole of that industry is unfairly distributed. Now, obviously, if you're the family member that gets like the rubbish a little bit, then you feel that inequality. but it's beautifully designed. I think it was an in-house team that came up with that, and it was an in-house team at Oatly as well. So I think that is one thing that's to your point there about the way Oatly's structured. I'm pretty sure, by and large, all of Oatly's marketing is in-house. And I think it's what that shows is they really have got the deep understanding and the confidence and conviction to be brave and bold and trust in what they say. So that's certainly where I'm going to be focusing, is like building the in-house capability, because if you've got a lack of understanding within a brand's team, and then you've got agencies that don't really get it and they've got a kind of incumbent way of thinking, you're never going to make the change quickly enough. And that that's where Tony's Chocolonely and Oatly stand out.
Tony, I remember
sorry,
no, go ahead.
No, these claims have got to be believable. So I read a thing that I think is a 47%. There's a study that I can send you the stats for, but that 47% of consumers in a good study said that they would buy the more sustainable product on offer if they believed it, but they didn't quite believe the claims. So they would be willing to spend the extra, pay more. I think it's at least up to 10% more people are very happy to spend for something more sustainable, despite the cost of living challenges. But 47% of them said that they wouldn't just quite, because the claims just weren't credible enough. So again, like focusing on really optimizing the way that these claims show up so that they feel really believable and appealing makes all the difference to get that shift, to make people go for the sustainable options.
Yeah, you really have to tell the story. And like there's such, again, we know like fame and emotion do so much to grow brands. And like this is all like tied to emotion. And I don't mean the emotion of fear of, doom and gloom. I actually mean like there's positive emotions here. Like the Tony's Chocolonely one is wonderful, because I remember getting one of the bars and showing the kids, why it was, designed the way it was designed. And now when we're in a shop, that's the bar they see. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like it's like that's, I know they're not advertising to kids. I did that, but it's like, but that's your
well to you. So it's fun.
Yeah. But it's like your memory structures, it's your brand, like all the good stuff that we hear about, if you read Paul Feldwick and Peter Field and all that stuff, you can see how this sits in, and go back to my earlier question, like, does it sit with marketing? Yes.
Yeah,
The
because
stories
it's
have to
about
be
brand
told.
affinity. It's all about, like, we've had so much of the sort of I shop, therefore I am kind of, we're all built in that way to want nicer and better things. It's part of human evolution to want nicer and better things and lovely experiences. But we have an affinity with the brands that we choose to associate with, and they create our identities. It's just basic human design. For those brands that can be even more evocative and appealing for this age of sustainability, where more and more people are concerned about the planet, the future of their children, can their children have children, all of this like reality, people want brands that they can feel good about, that are making the world a better place. So it definitely sits within branding, but they've got to be able to talk to the sustainability folks to get the right stories out, because otherwise the stories might be a bit ropey and risk greenwashing. So it's got to be a way of talking to each other.
Oh, brilliant. So if someone's listening today and they've heard this, they're kind of going, I think, we're not doing enough in my organization. I sit in marketing. What advice would you have them to kind of grab this? Because it feels like, to me, this is an opportunity for a marketer to kind of go, wow, this could be a huge thing for me to own. What advice would you have for somebody who's kind of sitting there going, what should I do now? What should I do to own this?
So a couple of things are that I'm leading a new thing called Marketing Declares. So I'm part of a sustainability council for BEMA, which is the kind of British Institute of Media and Advertising, interactive media, and we're leading Marketing Declares. So you can, right now, people could look at designdeclares.com, and probably by the time this podcast is out, the website will have been launched for Marketing Declares. And what that is a movement whereby everyone can sign up for saying these kind of 8 quite basic pledges about the things that they will do differently. So meaning it is really important. People have got to kind of understand the basics enough in order to kind of mean their intention to behave slightly differently. And things like challenging the briefs, questioning, what's the integrity behind the brief and what they're thinking of and what they're asking for. So just looking at Marketing Declares will be the kind of 8 pillars of it. There's this massive toolkit that goes behind it that makes it really easy for people to take action, whether they're within with a client team, whether working within an agency, or just any marketer. So look at Design Declares, but definitely look and please sign Marketing Declares. And the other thing that you could consider is something like, particularly if you can get your organisation to pay for it, the Cambridge Institute of Sustainability Leadership is a really, really good one. So they're like 8-week courses, and they're really, really worthwhile. And I last week started to become an assessor for the program, and it's amazing. I did one of the programs a couple of years ago now, a more kind of high sort of umbrella level one. But this one is specifically for marketing, media, and creative. The content's fantastic. The community and conversation within it is absolutely fantastic. And it's a really powerful way to accelerate someone's understanding of this context and how they can think and work differently. So, as a kind of taking the pledges or really getting stuck in, they would be 2 sort of ends of the spectrum of how to get involved.
Amazing. They too new to me, so definitely things I'm gonna check out. I really appreciate it. Maddy, thanks so much for your time today. I've really enjoyed catching up with you again. It's been a few years, COVID thrown in the middle, so we're not sure how long it's been. But obviously this is something that you're incredibly passionate about, and like that just obviously comes through. And so just massive best wishes with the new venture. I know it's not new area for you, so you've lots of depth of expertise in this, and I think organizations are going to be lucky to spend time with you and figure out how they can kind of accelerate this. So best of luck with it.
Thank you, Connie. It's been lovely to see you again, and great to have this conversation. I've just thought, actually, if anyone wants to have a look at those top tips, I have put them already. That manifesto, I've already put it on the website. So it's
brilliant.
flourishingworld.com, and then if you just have a quick peep at the about section, it's got all of these kind of manifesto points are all there, and then that one, as soon as it's live, that will link on to Marketing Declares, where you get the full toolkit of how to take action.
Amazing. I will add links into the description as well, in all the different places this will show up. So Maddy, thanks so much.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed that episode. Maddy, her passion for the topic is evident, but Maddy comes at this from a really commercial perspective. She wants to provide the evidence of the commercial value of sustainable businesses and help marketing increase its involvement in communicating that for greater business impact. Maddy is leading marketingdeclares.com, a climate energy emergency movement, in collaboration with their fellow members of the BIMA Sustainability Council. So check that out if you want to know more, or visit flourishingworld.com. So that is it for this episode. Thanks for listening and watching to That's What I Call Marketing. If you did enjoy, please do share, add comments with your feedback. You can get in touch and find all previous episodes on that'swhatIcallmarketing.com, or follow us on Instagram, That's What I Call Marketing, on Twitter at That's_marketing. And now you can watch our episodes back on YouTube, and you guessed it, That's What I Call Marketing. So for me, Conor Byrne, until the next episode, take care.